Welcome to the Social Ninjas podcast. I am your co-host, Kyle. Join with me as always is the other co-host, Jeremy. What is up, Jeremy?
Hey, you can stop clapping now. Come on, even though it's me. Thank you. Hello, how's it going?
We also have a very special guest with us, Kate. What is going on, Kate?
Hi, I'm good. Living the dream.
Awesome. Quick, just kind of like a maintenance note for the podcast. You do hear some like banging every once in a while. I do have a new roof being put on my house. And for some reason, they're still here at 8 o'clock. So it's just throwing that out there. It's like he's hearing me say that and he just keeps hitting. Okay, anyways.
Use the mute button when necessary.
Exactly. So, Kate, can you tell us a little bit about what you do and your background?
Yeah. So I'm 19. I'm from Syracuse, New York, and I do a lot of I like to public speak, and I'm a disability advocate and a grief advocate and a childhood cancer advocate. So I do a lot of stuff with that kind of stuff. I did a TEDx, and and I'm a speech pathology major in school. So I do a lot of work with students with cognitive disabilities, and that's my passion in life. That's pretty much what I do.
You said your major was what mythology?
Speech pathology.
Oh,
pathology.
Speech. Okay. All right. So yeah, I watched your TEDx this morning, and man, that was an awesome story. And maybe if you could give like a short overview of kind of like what your TEDx is about, so people listening who haven't watched it can kind of know what we're talking about here.
Yeah. So I gave a TEDx on grief and love and loss and childhood cancer. It's pretty much about I dated someone when I was 16 who had a terminal brain tumor, and I lost them. And it's about taking the risk on love despite circumstance, because that's something that's very tricky to take a risk when you know someone is going to die. And it's about living in the moment and really like advocating for childhood cancer, which is something that is just so underfunded. So yeah.
I have a question. So you could have not gone for it, but you decided to take that risk. And what was some of your main takeaways from going for it, and how would have your life, in your opinion, be different if you didn't go for it, taking that risk?
My life would be completely different if I didn't take that risk on Charlie. That was his name. In the moment, I was terrified. I literally had never dated anyone before, and it's like most people's first boyfriend is not someone who's terminally ill. That's a unique situation. But I just the kind of person he was is the best kind of person that you want to be around in your life. And I would be totally different if I hadn't taken the risk and he spent the last year of his life with me, and he took a risk on me. I took a risk on him, and I've taken so much away from Charlie and his mindset on life of trying to live in the moment. And and I wouldn't have opportunities like this to like advocate about stuff that's important, like childhood cancer and such.
So what made you want to take that risk? I know Jeremy and I were talking in here before you joined us. We were just kind of talking about like, man, that would be like a really tough decision, I feel, to, date someone who's terminally ill like that. And I feel like there might be that a kind of feeling to like maybe try to suppress those emotions so you don't have to go through that. So I'm just kind of wondering like, what made you want to take that risk?
So initially I was super like, I want to suppress everything. Like I don't really know what I'm feeling. Like, I don't want to think about it. But I have a terrifying fear of regret, and I just like don't do regret at all. And I reconnected with this person that I'd known since kindergarten, and we just had this connection that just kind of made sense. Like, something like most things in my life are very complicated, and that just kind of was easy, and it made sense, and it felt right. And yeah, it was terrifying, and it's not something that's typical, obviously, but yeah, I was really glad that I did take that risk, and that's why I gave the TED Talk, because I feel like a lot of people wouldn't think to do that, or would kind of go with my initial reaction to like suppress or like kind of like pretend like nothing's going on, or just like try to stay friends because that might be easier. Because it's hard getting into a relationship with someone that you know is going to die. He had DFPG, which is a terminal brain tumor on your brainstem, which has a 0% chance of survival. So it was very tricky because going into a relationship knowing that someone's 100% gonna die. Yeah, it's messed up, but I'm really glad that I did.
Now, my question is, are you the type of person who takes those type of risks in general, or is this kind of a first time, and then you've kind of done that since? Take me through that.
I am not a risk taker at all in general. Like, I'm very planned, calculated. Like, I like kind of don't really do stuff without thinking about it. But I definitely am a kind of person who takes risks on people. I always want to try, and I don't want regrets ever. So yes and no. Like, in terms of people, like, I'm definitely a kind of person that I will always give someone the benefit of the doubt, or will always try to connect with someone despite circumstance. But in general, I'm a very anxious person, so I don't really do that.
So did being in a relationship with Charlie, did that cause you to have a lot of anxiety, or did you have like moments of anxiety, just kind of thinking, like realizing maybe at points in times, like, oh, realizing like, this person that I love is, going to die eventually. I mean, how did you handle all that?
So it was especially tricky because I'm someone with significant like mental illness. I've had generalized anxiety, OCD, and depression for most of my life, especially generalized anxiety and OCD, literally since I was a child. So I've always been very anxious, very that kind of person. Like, I've been in therapy since I was like 8, so that was kind of a thing that I didn't that made things a lot harder. But but definitely being with Charlie made things a lot more complicated in that sense. I had a lot more panic attacks while we were together. Like, I've had panic attacks for a long time, but it got much worse because when you know someone is like when we started dating, he was already past his survival expectation, which was supposed to be 9 months, but when we started dating, he was almost at 2 years. So if I didn't hear from him for a few hours after I texted him, like, normally I'd be like, oh, whatever. But in this case, I'm like, he's dead. Like, so I had a lot of panic attacks, or because sometimes when that happened, he was in the hospital, stuff like that. So that was very, very, very difficult. And like, I developed PTSD from that. And I think I honestly had it at the time, but I didn't realize until later when I talked about it with my therapist. It messes with you. Cancer is something that really messes with everybody. It messed with him in his life, and it messed with me and all the other people that he loved.
I heard you say you have general anxiety and
Mhm.
PTSD and depression. Has that gotten better over the years? And if so, what have you done to have it not affect you as much, if so?
Yeah, so it's something that goes up and down. Like I have been in therapy for a long time, which is very helpful. And I'm on medications and I do whatever I can, but definitely the most difficult ones, like my depression improved drastically from, it was really horrible like about 4 or 5 years ago, but now it's something that rarely affects me. It only really affected me again after I lost Charlie. But my anxiety and my OCD are big constants in my life. It's just something that I learned to cope with more than anything.
Is there something in particular that helped your depression?
Yeah, I think I definitely was someone who didn't talk about it for a very, very long time. I'm not the kind of person that comes off as someone who would be depressed. Because I'm a very happy person. I'm very positive. And so I just kind of didn't talk about it for a really long time. And I wasn't getting help. And I honestly needed to be medicated because my hormones were imbalanced and such. And since I kind of realized like what my life meant to other people and I started getting the help that I needed, the change has been drastic for sure. And it even gotten better since when I knew Charlie, because it made me have a better appreciation for life, because he's someone who wanted to live so badly. Like he would have given anything to live, even just a day longer. So it really gave me a bigger appreciation for life.
What was it like as far as, so, okay, let me rephrase. Was there kind of like a balance for you in like making a decision to take the risk, or maybe while you're in a relationship with Charlie, even like were you maybe scared that like doing this and knowing that you would have to watch your boyfriend die, did that kind of scare you as far as like kind of messing with mental health struggles that you're having at the time, with anxiety and OCD and that type of stuff?
Yeah, it was complicated because I definitely didn't think about that when I went into it. I was just, because in my mind I'm like, oh, it can't get any worse. Like that's just the way I am. Like that's just how I've always been. But yeah, it really did significantly affect my mental health. But at the same time, he was very supportive about it, just as I was supportive to him. And we helped each other out. But it was definitely difficult in that way where, in any typical relationship, like I'd probably be the one with more significant health problems. Typically, it depends, I guess. But in this situation, it was such a drastic difference. But yeah, I honestly wish I had thought about that a little bit more before going into it, or thought of a plan to try and preserve my mental health during that time in my life. But I did the best I could, and I honestly since, like, it's been a lot of trying to kind of use what I experienced during that time and kind of deal with it now after he's gone, especially the PTSD side of things, because that's something I never had and I never expected to get. I really had no clue that could even come from it.
My question is, going through that, I always often talk about, we've talked about on this podcast a lot, is the more of a struggle that I go through, the stronger I become as a person on a lot of layers. I'm curious if you believe going through that has, like, what kind of maybe superpowers almost you got in from going through it, if you have.
Yeah, I am definitely a person who believes that pain fuels passion. And like, I would not be doing what I'm doing today if it wasn't for that. And or it wasn't for all of my struggles I've gone through in my life. And it's made me a more humorous person. It's made me a more sympathetic person, a more empathetic person, and it's
Superpowers over here.
super, yeah, real superpowers. I don't know. Yeah.
It's cool. I have a question. But you talked about mental health a lot, and I'm curious what your take is on where mental health is now in our society, and where you want it to go in the future.
Yeah, I think it has improved since I was a kid, for sure. I remember when I was younger, like my mom saying to me, like, don't tell anyone you're going to therapy, say you're going to an appointment, like never like disclose that you're going through this kind of stuff because people will judge you, or they won't think you're as capable because of the things you go through. And it definitely has improved in that way, but in a lot of other ways, like especially now during the coronavirus and stuff, like that has such a significant impact on mental health by a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure you guys understand for sure.
a lot of my judgment. A lot of people are on edge right now, which for good reason.
Yeah, and it makes sense why it'd be worse. Life in general is a lot harder for everybody right now, but it's with people with mental illness, it just sends all, I think even people who were doing better before kind of makes it spike. And I think it's important to talk about mental illness in a way that is truthful, but also hopeful. Like I'm never gonna be the kind of person who is like, I have completely overcome. I feel 100% every day. Like I don't struggle at all. Like that's just not me. But I'm also the kind of person who is like, I am extremely high functioning for like my level of stuff. And that's because of all the coping skills I've learned and the help I have gotten. Like most people like me, like I go to college 4.5 hours from home and I live there, which is something I never thought I'd be able to do. So yeah, I think it's important.
What are some of those coping skills that you learned?
I'm a big believer in DBT, which is a type of therapy that is like different type of coping skills, such as like turtling, which is like it's like taking care. It's like self-care. It's like put yourself in a little ball and like take care of yourself, or like riding the wave is the name of another skill, which is just kind of just going with it even when stuff is like hard and just kind of getting through. Like there's a bunch of different types of skills in that, but like honestly, like to be truthful for myself, and this is probably not true for a lot of people, that I'm a big believer in just sucking it up and getting through, which is honestly like the way to cope is like talk about it and feel the pain and like deal with it and admit that things are hard and then just do it anyways, I guess.
It
I like
reminds me.
that.
Yeah, I like a lot of the stuff you said. You said just feel the pain, and for me, it's like it's framing. I know I don't like to talk about myself very as much because this is about you, but like for me, this is one example. Today, I was on a run today, and I felt my brain saying, "Oh, this is so hard. This is challenging. Oh, I don't want to run anymore." And for fun, I was like, "Oh, this growth feels amazing." So seeing that struggle as growth, and like, wow, this growth feels great. It's all about, so for framing.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's so important. I totally get that. Like, yeah, that mindset, trying to like, put it away from like the negative, like feeling the negative for a second, and then moving forward into making it into something that it's like we're just getting through. Or yeah, like when you're running, the more you run, like the better you feel, and the better you get, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, this is like pertinent to like me, going through a breakup whenever a month ago, and And I was like, this is the worst thing ever. This sucks so much. Why? I wish I could have done things better. And then like, turn what you talked about, like don't have regrets. It's getting like a month after. I'm just now, getting to the point of, wow, that's a great growing experience. I've learned so much.
Exactly. Like it's definitely like even like yeah, and like especially breakups are honestly the worst. Like Charlie and I actually broke up before he died because of
Oh.
which was honestly the hardest thing I ever went through, because he was trying to protect me because he knew he was at the end of his life. It was like just about like 2 months before he died, and he pushed me away and said all these horrible things to me that he knew would push me away because he wanted to do that. And at the time, like, and even still now to an extent, I'm like, that was definitely the hardest thing I ever went through. But in another way, I'm like, it really helped me learn that like I learned so much through that relationship, and I learned so much that how much you can deal with, and that not everything comes from a place of hate or a place of not of love. Sometimes it comes from a place of protecting himself and protecting me. And yeah, it's very complicated. My life is very complicated in general, clearly. But
no,
yeah.
it's true. I think what I heard from that is it almost amped up your pain threshold in a sense.
Yeah, it definitely did. Like I feel like I can deal with pretty much anything at this point. I'm like, throw it at me. Like I can deal with whatever. Like it doesn't like obviously things bother me and I struggle, but I'm not in a place where I think that I can't handle stuff anymore. I'm like, I've already hit rock bottom like 8 times, so like throw me down there again.
Doing those reps.
Yes, like let me do those reps.
So you've mentioned a couple times like about how you didn't suppress your emotions and you allowed yourself to feel it, whether it was feeling the love for Charlie and expressing it, or you were talking about how when your coping skills is allow yourself to like feel the pain, let that happen, and then just kind of move forward from there. Have you always had that kind of like just kind of instinct to feel things instead of suppressing things, or did you learn that, or how'd that come about?
I definitely learned that. That's not my natural instinct. My natural instinct is more to suppress, like pretend I'm not feeling that, like especially like in public or when I'm around my friends. I'm like the mom friend. Like I gotta take care of everybody. I gotta put on a happy face. Like I gotta just like that's just how I am, and that's my natural instinct. But I gotta remind myself like when I need to feel, and like when things like when I need to feel, I'm the kind of person I feel great. Like I don't feel like normal amounts. I feel like I feel either terrible or I feel awesome, and like I'm a person of extremes, and I think I've kind of just learned to embrace that. Like the highs are highs and the lows are lows, and that's the way things have to be for me.
So you said you kind of struggle with general anxiety, and even when we were checking in, you said checking in with some anxiety as usual. And as usual is for me too, even though I've done a bunch of these podcasts at this point. I always have a little bit of an anxiety. So, well, first I want to applaud you for actually getting on here and still doing the podcast. That's awesome. But I'd like to know, like, how do you get yourself to get to that point to kind of like push through those, anxious thoughts and actually do what you're wanting to do or needing to do?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging, and yeah, I feel like I'm in the same place as you. Like I'm just at such usual and like levels of anxiety. Like nothing is surprising to me anymore. Like when I'm super anxious, I'm like, oh, this is the norm. Like it's almost like when I feel happy or calm, like I'm confused. I'm like, this is odd. So I've like really gotten to this place where I can't do the things I want to do, and I can't live the life I want to live, and I just let that hold me back all the time. And like I'll be totally fine up until like 5 minutes before I got in here. I was like panicking. I'm like, I'm gonna say something stupid, or I'm gonna forget how to talk, or I'm like, God knows I can talk literally forever. So that's just a stupid thought in itself. But yeah, just kind of doing the important and the stuff you need to do and you want to do despite the levels of anxiety, and like kind of just learning like when that's the norm, like eventually I feel like over time you just kind of like learn to deal with it, because that's just how it always is.
Sounds like from everything you're saying, it's comfortable in the discomfort, or comfortable in the uncomfortable, which makes more
Exactly.
sense. I like that. Yeah. And then just expecting that things are not going to be amazing all the time.
Yeah.
I was listening to actually another TED Talks. This lady is talking about how the people who are most resilient are the ones that are realistic that things are going to go wrong, not to be in denial and things are going amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I feel like that I have this theory that people that are like have like high levels of anxiety are the best in crisis, because we're always expecting a crisis. We think the crisis is always gonna come.
I've been planning for so long for this crisis. Now who's freaking out?
Exactly. I literally like two weekends ago I helped save someone from drowning, and like
Whoa.
everyone else was like panicking in the moment. I'm like, this is what I was born for. Like, this is my moment to shine.
Oh, it's funny. That reminds me of when I was a younger kid. I remember I was over at my grandma's house, and I don't know how this happened, but I walked into the dining room, and her whole dining room table was just flaming on fire. I didn't run. I just walked over to my grandma, and I was like, "Hey, grandma, your table's on fire." I was just like so calm about it. Like, I'm just used to this crisis, man. I mean,
Yeah, that's how it goes. Like, I honestly think that is the truth. Like, someone needs to do like a real test on this. Like, that's my theory. If I knew any science skills, like that's what I would test.
There's actually science to back up what you just talked about. They say they did a study and they had people practice like what if, like what would you do if this happened, and this happened. And they found that people don't plan, like they don't, because they're like, why would I? Because it hasn't happened yet. So they're saying like the people that like plan for the worst case scenario are the ones that act calm in those situations because they're practiced.
Exactly. I feel like that's so common with people with anxiety. Like, I remember ever since I was a child, I'd be like, what would happen if that man like climbed through my window? Like, what would I do? How would I get out of it? And
I'm
like,
curious,
that's obviously not normal, but like, I'm
how would
ready.
you get out of it? That's what I want to know.
Oh, I would definitely like, I would jump out the other window. I'm very tall. I'd probably reach. That's not real.
I didn't know other people had these thoughts. I thought I was the only one who like planned disasters in the head. Like I swear, like every time usually when I go to work, I drive across this bridge across the Ohio River. And sometimes I'll think like, or if I have like my kids in my car from driving across, like, okay, if this bridge were to break and we start to fall in the water, like, okay, what would I do? I'm like, okay, I'd probably unbuckle myself and get my son. And I like go through this whole scenario, and I'm like, I'm not anxious about it, but I just like think about these random little scenarios all the time.
Yeah, I think it's honestly kind of funny. Like, I like finding the humor in the stuff, like especially like the stuff my OCD tells me. Like, that stuff is just dumb, and I love finding the humor in like my anxiety and OCD thoughts. Like, because I feel like I would not be able to get through it if I couldn't, for sure. And like, I know it's so funny how like people with anxiety, like we're prepared for every disaster. Like, watch out. Like, if you need help in a disaster, like we're here.
Yeah, I like the aspect of it doesn't define you. It's just one part of you. This reminds me, I had maybe a few days ago, I was having a hard time getting out of bed, And I decided to like separate myself from that part of me that doesn't want to get out of bed and is kind of not feeling well. I kind of I almost leaned into a different part of me, which was that really compassionate parental figure. And it actually worked so well. I was like, I know, Jeremy, you don't want to get out of bed. You're having a hard time. I hear you. It's hard. I get it. But we have to get up, okay? I was like, okay. And like, actually felt good. I kind of did it as like a joke, but it actually like really helped. And then in the middle of it, like I dropped something, and normally I'd be like upset. And I was like, yeah, I know it's okay. You dropped it. It's not, you're just human. That's okay. Just pick it up. Not a big deal. I said this out loud. This made me think of it. It actually helps. Well, help
Yeah,
me.
that's smart. You get to parent yourself.
Yeah, it's okay. I know. And I think it works for everything though. Like, say a guy asks a girl out, and the girl says no. It's like, dude, I'm proud of you. You went for it. As opposed to she said no. No.
Exactly.
The win
Honestly,
is
like
an
that's
act.
courage right there. Like I'm the same way. I'm like, well, you went for it. Like you can't change what the other person thinks. Not out of your control, my friend.
Kyle and I always talk about this, like positive effort over results every day.
Mhm.
I like saying it over and over just to remind myself.
It's important. It's good stuff.
I like the idea of using humor or finding humor with anxiety. I think that's not something we've talked a whole lot about, but I think that's something I do that I didn't even realize I did as much as I do.
You can, like as I talk about, you can talk to yourself. Oh, you freaking out. Oh, you're so cute when you freak out. Oh,
That's true. I
I
think
love how
that's the
much you
best way
go.
to handle it. I know my therapist is the person who finds me funniest in my life. Like she has me convinced that I can be a stand-up comedian. Like I crack her up like literally every day. I'm like, this is my new career. Like it's honestly kind of funny.
I actually, I'm not gonna lie. I saw this. I met there's this guy who's a stand-up comedian. He did a TEDx. He does it
Mhm.
on mental health, and he uses like normalizing mental health. He uses humor to normalize all like the crazy stuff because this guy had a crazy, dark story, really challenging dark story, and he just made it like a joke out of it, and like it really helps him cope and get through all those hurdles because sometimes those hurdles are really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. And like I definitely I really respect people that do that. Like I think that's honestly the best way that I found to deal with anxiety, my OCD especially. I have this friend that we actually met in group therapy, and now we're like best friends, which is kind of funny. I still have her in my phone as so and so from group, even though we've been friends for like 5 years. And we always joke about the crazy stuff our OCD has us do. We're like, oh, like say I clean the bathroom for like an hour, like regular for like no reason. Like regular people, I'm like, oh, that's just how it goes. Like that's what we do. Like rub until our fingers bleed. Like,
And you like, I can see you making the joke. Your fingers aren't even bleeding. Come on, where's your what kind of OCD person are you? It's like,
I know, literally. My favorite is my hands bleed a lot in the winter because I wash them a lot. And I live in Syracuse, which is the snowiest city in the country. So it's just two bad things at once. I'll like paint my nails red and I'll be like, look, it matches the blood. Like it goes together. Fashion accessories.
sorry, is that a red shirt? Matching.
Oh my gosh. I appreciate you guys get my jokes. I feel like most people are like,
We think you're funny too.
Yeah, it's so good. Oh, it reminds me when I broke my leg in Vietnam.
Mhm.
I was miserable. I was having a hard time. I had to like cut my Asia trip short 2 months. But no joke, my favorite part about breaking my leg is when people would ask me how I broke my leg. I'm like, broke it in Nam. I said it like that. It's so good. I look forward to people asking me. I'm like, how'd you break your leg? Back in Nam, broke my leg. I just did that.
That's the best. I have this friend from camp I work at for children with cancer, and she has only 2 fingers in her hand. So with the little kids, they ask her, they're like, "What happened to your hand?" She goes, "Oh, shark ate it." Like,
That's
froze
amazing.
off in the winter. Like a new one every single time.
That's all. That's attitude.
Yeah,
That's beautiful.
exactly. Cool stuff.
So maybe you can help me with my anxiety to do a TEDx.
Yes, you should. Honestly, I'm dumb in a certain way. I did not think about it. I'm so impulsive when it comes to that kind of stuff. I'm like, I'm a good public speaker. Like, no one can talk circles like me. Like, I can just do it. It was harder than I thought. Like, I just was convinced I could just like BS my way through it, which is
You
not a good
did
thing.
though. I mean, no, how is it not good? You did a TEDx, and I thought it was great. So how is that? How are
Yeah.
you stupid? I'm gonna challenge that story in your head and say that's actually amazing. That's not dumb at all. Like you did it. If you didn't play that, that story, you wouldn't have done it. You would have overthought it.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's kind of cool. I remember I was there. I was so nervous when I got there because like everyone there except for like one person is significantly older than me. I was at it was at RIT, which is like a college in Rochester, New York. And there was like 2 doctors there. Like everyone is at least like in their 30s. Like, and I'm just showing up, and I think I was 18 at the time. I was 18. And some guy who was working it comes up to me. He goes, "Did you hear someone here who's giving a talk is still in high school?" And like, I'm like, "Yeah, me."
She sounds amazing.
That's literally it, because I'm very tall, so I look older than I am, and it's just really funny that he was just saying that to me, and I was like, wow, like when you say it like that, it sounds impressive.
It's like, I love it. The story you tell yourself. It's so powerful. It's like, or you could have been like, "Are you joking me? What does she know?" And just kind of make fun of it. Why would anyone at that age do that? What does she know?
Yeah, it was funny. It was cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's good attitude. You have a good attitude on it, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
I
so.
agree. So where do you want to see, I don't want to say where do you want to see yourself in 5 years, but like what is like your goal with the advocacy you do for childhood cancer and mental health? What are you trying to do with that? Where do you want to see that go?
I definitely want to public speak more. It's something I really enjoy, and I haven't done a lot of. And I think it's important. I think I definitely like, my life is not boring. I'll give you that. Like, it's something I feel like I don't realize it. I just kind of think like, oh, just like live my life like I'm a person. But when I tell people my story, they're like, that's crazy. And I would like to do more public speaking. I would like to do lots of things. Like, I would love to do something like very real role modeling, and I want to be a speech therapist in a school. And I don't know, I'm kind of like, the world is limitless. Like, I wrote a book. I would like to see that published eventually. So yeah.
You wrote a book?
What? You wrote a book?
I did.
Jeez, I just making me feel not good about myself right now.
No, you have a podcast. I don't have that. Oh my gosh,
Stop
that's
it.
impressive.
No. Say more. Tell me how great
Now
it
she's
is.
helping us.
Yeah, I wrote a book.
What's your book on?
It's a mixture of poetry and creative nonfiction. On kind of like, I started writing it like when I was with Charlie, and I finished it about a year ago. It just kind of like was me processing everything that I was going through, and like it follows like the whole like timeline, like from when we were together, like till like past his death, like way past his death, like and yeah, it talks on grief and on just, it's like, it's very like real, and I talk about mental illness in there and stuff, and it's something that I needed to do for myself. Like, for a while I was like dead set on getting it published. I was like, I did my TED talk, like time to get publish my book now. Like, I feel like I rely a little heavily on like my accomplishments for like self-worth, but I definitely, at this point, I'm like, if it happens, it happens, but like, it's not something that I need. Like, it's heavy. which is not something that I'm usually put out into world. Like even in my like TEDx, like I make jokes in there. Like my friends are telling me they're crying watching it. I'm like, I'm joking around. Like, yeah. So it's different from what I usually put out.
Is it possible that there's a solid amount of readers that could change their life forever?
I hope so. That would be the hope, and that's why I would like to publish it. But it's hard to publish a book. That's hard. I did not really think about it. If you don't really have a following, it's something that's very difficult. It's something I would love to do eventually, but it's just a matter of figuring out how, I guess.
Well, if you ever do publish it, we can help you push it out.
I'd appreciate that.
Ladies and gentlemen, it was once on our podcast 1 year ago, Kate published her book. Hey, Kate, go ahead and tell us about your book and that process.
Wow.
Wow.
Episode already.
I have a question on grief. What has been some of the techniques that has helped with grief the most?
So grief is complicated. And it's been really hard because it's something, especially people my age, like they're not used to and they don't talk about, and it makes them very uncomfortable. People are very uncomfortable about death. But more than anything, I like to talk about Charlie all the time. Like, that was my best friend. Like, if I want to talk about him, like, I'm going to talk about him. And that's what's most helpful to me. Like, talking about him, I still see his family. I'm still super close with his family. I saw his mom and his sister just the other week. And honestly, this can sound a little crazy, but I like to have, like, when I'm in the car, when I drive to work, so I work on a farm, and I take all my country roads, and it's like chill. Like that's like our time. Like I listen to music, and I just like spend that moment like thinking about him, like spending. Yeah, it's odd, but like even like I like talk to myself in my car, like joking to him, like. But I've learned like because that's the kind of person he was. Like he joked about death like a lot. I remember one time I was in the car with him, and I was driving him to a diner. And he goes to me, he goes, "Kate, I think I would like to have a 70s rock themed funeral." I'm like, what the heck? Like, I was like pulled over on the highway. I'm like, what are you talking about? But like, that's just the kind of person he was. And I like to make jokes like that and like kind of take everything, with that kind of like lightness to like, he's not in pain anymore. Like, yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah, sense of humor definitely makes it easier. I remember in the most, like when the COVID first started and as everyone was so scared, and I like would make jokes to my mom sometimes, like, God, I kind of want to get COVID. Cause then I look back at my life, and if I don't get it, I feel like I missed out. Like everyone else got it, and I didn't. I made that joke a lot. I just thought it was hilarious. I was like, I want to be cool. I'm like, oh, I remember that. You got it? Yeah, I did. That was crazy.
COVID guy.
FOMO.
Yeah, exactly. FOMO. That was what I was getting at. So I was like, my mom didn't like it, but I always thought it was really funny. It made me think of it.
Yeah. That's definitely. I know. I feel like. Yeah, humor, I feel like, is the best way to get through everything. And like, obviously, like, I'm not gonna go off and be a professional comedian, but like, I like when it comes to grief and when it comes to mental health, like, I definitely like more than anything, like, that's what helps me get through. And like, especially like, but other people do not appreciate when I joke about like death and stuff, like, just because like Charlie did it all the time, so like I get it. Like, it's something at first that I was like this is a little odd, like I don't know how to respond to it, but like I got used to it, and it really helps. And like but like other people don't always get that. Like I remember one time I made a dead boyfriend joke once, which was just a mistake in itself. Like which was, I thought it was funny. He would have thought it was funny. I like cursed him out, like flipped him off like to the sky, and my friends were like, "Are you okay?" Like I'm fine. Like this is like regular for me. Like, this isn't.
It's like normalizing it.
Yeah, exactly.
So let me ask you a question that we ask all our guests. If you had the ability to send one message to everybody in the world, what would it be?
Take the risk and love big, for sure. Simple as that.
Take the risk and love big.
I wrote that down as well.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I like to do on my Instagram, I do like updates and stuff about grief every once in a while, and like I always write that at the end of my big giant like long Kate captions. I always write like take the risk and love big, for sure.
Beautiful. So if someone is wants to find you on the social medias, where can they find you?
You can find me at Kate Eyck on Instagram, and in my Instagram I have like a link tree to like my TED Talk. I did another podcast with a depression podcast called What Would You Miss. Like, all my stuff is all right in there.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for your bravery and your vulnerability, and for sharing a space with us today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Kyle, do we have any plugs? We always got to mention.
Oh.
He hates doing it.
Can you do the plug? Okay, I'll power through. I'm just a little bit sleep deprived. Okay. For you listeners out there that are still listening,
you're amazing. Also, go ahead.
You are amazing, but to be even more amazing, we would like you to go to our website, thesocialninjas.com, and if you can do one of two things, or you can do both.
Patreon.
So we have a survey on there for you guys to take. It's just like a listener survey, so we can know a little bit more about you guys, kind of what topics you're interested in, that type of stuff. And then we also have a way you can support the podcast and get access to cool, nifty gifties from the Social Ninjas. So
extra stuff? What?
Extra stuff.
Cool.
Gifties that are nifty.
And for 3 days of good luck, you can go ahead and give us a 5-star and give us a review and say, wow, this changed my life. Whatever else you like to say as positive. Until then, we'll see you next week.